All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this slightly delayed episode of the Church Encourager podcast. Thank you for being so patient. Tuesday, I had a little trip with my wife, Kimberly. We celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary. So happy anniversary, Kimberly. We get to celebrate all week and all the time. Every day is like our anniversary, I like to say. It may or may not be true, but that's the viewpoint I like to take in our marriage, and things work out better that way. But anyway, enough of my rambling, Dad. It was a great message this last weekend. And, we got into this really important part. Therefore, do not worry, as Jesus talks about. You described worry in the message as carrying tomorrow's possibilities as though they're today's realities. Do you have any experience where you kind of do that? And, how do you think that impacts everyone's daily lives?
Yeah, of course. I think, I think it resonates because it's fairly normal. And yet it's kind of life stealing because you, s- it's very easy to spend a lot of emotional energy, if nothing else, thinking about possible events that don't ever happen. And then you can't get that back. I mean, it's just wasted, right? And and so the thing is to train yourself to not spend too much time doing that. I don't know the balance. I mean, I think there's a way of looking ahead and thinking about things that you might want to pursue, or it's different. It's vision over worry, right? Like, and the outcomes and those sort of things. So I think it's one of those things I think at. But if it's something that's very disturbing and you keep trying to go through it to figure out how I think those are the things that we need to catch ourselves on. And um, I think it was, and again, so I don't know that change sometimes is age, because as a younger person, you have a lot more time to sort of ponder
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and, as you get to a certain point, it's different because a lot of those things that you thought you were worried would happen haven't happened, and you sort of begin to trust that, oh, okay, it's going to be all right. But a lot of the things you think about, I think, as a young parent, but you just kind of have to trust God, that because you're worrying doesn't do a thing, and that's kind of the whole point.
Right.
Is it who is he trustworthy? This coming weekend, we're building on last weekend by talking about his faithfulness and how he demonstrates his faithfulness constantly, and it's woven into creation, and how we have to be able to see those things. And there's some more. I have a couple of more things to encourage people to do when they're stuck, and so hopefully that'll help. But yeah, none of this was meant to be shaming. I think it's a real thing, and yet pointing out to people that spending all that time worried about this stuff isn't changing a thing, right? It's sitting in that rocking chair going nowhere, and
Right.
just getting more and more worked up about possibilities and
And
all those.
this time of year, we all kind of end up in that rocking chair looking at our hurricane watch apps. There were a couple systems at the Atlantic I saw when we were out. And, the general consensus is nothing's going to happen. But it's like, well, I've heard that one before. And then you
Yeah.
kind of do all these what ifs. So this was a really practical message heading into this time of year for us in the Keys. So
Yeah.
very, very well
But
done.
before you keep going, I was thinking when you said that because you don't know how they track, but the one that hit us, Irma, they tracked it days in advance, coming right over us and
Yeah.
making this weird turn. And I
Uh-huh.
thought that they can't possibly predict that. And man, they hit it to the mile. And so I don't play that anymore. And I'm like, okay, then they're pretty
Yeah.
good about once they get close, they kind of have an idea. So anyway, and what do? You can't
What do
worry
you
about it.
gain by worrying? You just kind of deal with it. And
You and I sometimes once you've been through it, it changes things too. It's happened now. It's like, okay, well, wasn't fun, but we've been through enough of them
right.
that it's like we know that he's there. We can trust him, and he'll
Absolutely.
he'll give us the next step.
So let's see. You described worry as subtracting peace, joy, rest, and presence from our lives. What do you think impacts you in your life the most? And can you think of a time where that impacted just your life or your walk with God?
Oh yeah, I mean, as we were talking, even in the part of the ministry, there was we've been very blessed, always blessed, but there was a time when it was very much felt week to week, and I would there would be time spent consumed with how do we keep going, right? And what's going to happen? And I and yet knowing that God was faithful, but having to walk it out and trust him. And so I can say I spent a lot of time, 25, 30 years ago, worrying about things that may or may not take place. And the reality is, you, if they happen, God's got you. You know what I mean? It's like,
Mhm.
but having to get to that spot is often just over time, and then kind of looking back and seeing, well, he's always met me, so I don't believe he's going to stop. It doesn't mean things don't happen that I don't care for, but he's got it. We just talked about hurricane. I mean, we had a major hurricane. I'd rather not do that again, but he met us here, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So all those things are, if you, I think if I can, help people, uh, so they don't have to go through what I've carried that I shouldn't have carried, in getting to that spot of trusting the Lord, then I think that would be a big win for a lot of folks. So that's miserable sitting there worrying. I mean, just the weight and the pressure and the stress of things that may not happen. And most of them didn't happen. Some happened. I mean, but and here we are, right? So it's kind of how you have to get to that. I remember many years ago, I used to have to say to myself when I was stuck in something, listen, 5 years from now, this isn't going to make any difference.
Sure.
And that would sort of help me shift back in the time. I like my Bible verse now, um, but it's those sort of things and it's true that things that you spend a lot of time sort of worrying about, they will have worked themselves out eventually.
Yeah, really good stuff. Then we'll kind of end with this point here. Uh, you suggested three practical steps: naming what you're carrying, separating your responsibilities from God's, and turning worry into prayer. Which of those do you think is the hardest for people to get? If you could quantify that anyhow, or maybe help us kind of dig through those three things.
Yeah. But and I think all of them sort of fit together.
Hmm.
So I think if you'll do them, then you can get worry into prayer. I think by itself that's a challenge, because we may not. We're so used to worrying that we may not catch ourselves in how much more impactful it would be if we could switch that into prayer. So what you have to kind of do is, well, what is it that is there something that I sort of keep going back to that's a possibility that I'm not wanting? Let's call it an unwanted possibility that I'm spending a lot of time on. You got to name that, because that's where you're stuck. And then, even in that, what of that is your responsibility, if any, and what is God's, and know the difference, because this is never we don't get to ignore life. We live in a fallen world on a broken planet. We have to embrace it every day. But the issue is, what does God want me to deal with, and what does he take care of? And knowing those differences. And I think once we get those two things down, then we can get worry into prayer, because when we catch ourselves moving into trying to take on his responsibilities, that can be one of those sort of warning lights, if you would. Hey, you need to give that back to him instead of trying to carry it and fix it. So that's kind of the process. It's it takes practice. I hope that's okay for folks, but and you don't beat yourself up. But it I used to, you know I used to know what was getting it for me is I'd start to get upset in my stomach, like unsettled. And I'd like, if I could catch myself with that, it was a physical thing. Let me catch
Mhm.
myself with that stress and get that to the Lord, and then, then it was worth it, right? It's almost immediately, it was like, oh, why am I doing that? But it's such a part of many people's lives that even getting a hold of it to move is kind of tricky.
Yeah, sure. Well, Dad, thank you. Very timely message for this season for us. And looking forward to part 12 this weekend as well. And we'll be recording our Bible Institute's podcast here shortly as well. But anyway, to everybody listening to Church Encourager, thank you. Join us this weekend at Keys Vineyard. God bless you. We'll see you next week.